Here, let me give you the controls. You're going to need those. There you go.
Okay. All right. And Bree, can you see my screen okay?
I can.
Okay. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. This is the next in our Demystifying series, as Bree mentioned. And we're just trying to share our knowledge about SalesLogix and sort of build some goodwill and so forth throughout the SalesLogix community. And through this series of webinars, we're trying to remove some of the mystery, a lot of the common things we get asked by customers and prospects. What about this? What about that? And so we're sort of organizing these into what we think are somewhat logical webinars. So in this particular one, as you may well know, SalesLogix is available to be deployed either through the LAN client or the web client. And it's kind of unique in the CRM industry in that it does have both types of clients. And to be more specific, we get asked, well, what's the LAN client? And the LAN client is where you are actually installing SalesLogix on your workstation, and the web client is the version that you access through a browser. And so you can deploy it either way. And I didn't specifically say it here, but the SalesLogix Cloud Edition is also the web edition. So the web edition, you can install it on-premise on your own servers, or you can subscribe to it on Amazon's cloud servers through SalesLogix, and that's called the cloud version. So we're going to concentrate today on, well, what are the feature and function differences between the two? And it's important to do this today because there is differences. That might be the first question you would have is, well, why are there differences? And the answer is that the current web client is been, I would say the 7.5 release is about 3 or 4 years now in the making. So they continue to add more features and more functions to that web client. The LAN version today, version 7.5.4, is really very similar to version 2.0 of SalesLogix that's quite literally more than 10 years old. And it's kind of what we would say reached the end of its life cycle as far as what is Sage doing with the LAN client. The answer is not much. It's not much different today than it was last year or the year before or the year before that. The reason is they're really concentrating their development resources on the web version. And for a season of time, they were trying very hard and doing a good job of trying to get the web client to at least be the equal of the LAN client. We didn't want it to be missing anything. And that's really kind of flip-flop now, where the web has definitely surpassed the LAN client in what features and functions are available in it. Now, that was not the purpose of today's demonstration, is to showcase how much better the web is. I'm not about to conclude that because every customer is a little bit different in what's important to them. But I'm going to be going through a slideshow presentation and then bouncing between the LAN and the web client and showing this stuff to you. It's going to be pretty obvious at the end of the presentation that it looks like the web does a lot more. And the answer is that's true. That's correct. It is more feature-rich at this point, and it continues even into the next release, version 8, which is around the corner. They continue to add features, functions to the web, and very little has changed in the LAN client in version 8. But that'll be part of another one of our future webinars too, is, okay, what's new in version 8? So stay tuned for that. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the user should expect, maybe some of the administrator differences, not much is different there, and then just briefly touch on what's different for developers. And here again, we're planning another one of these webinars that really does concentrate on the developer aspect of it, and that'll be taught by our developers because I don't know how to develop. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide and just sort of get into the meat of it here. The first thing that's missing in the web but is available in the LAN are what they call hotkeys. And hotkeys are, you see, I've clicked on this View Contacts, Accounts, Opportunities, you could hit Shift F6, Shift F7, so if you have a really good memory about what all these different keyboard keystroke combinations do, you can actually navigate around in the LAN client pretty rapidly. Now, this is kind of a leftover from the DOS days, kind of dating myself here. So if you know about DOS software, there was no mouse, and so you had to use keyboard hotkeys, shifts, and controls, and combinations of keys to actually get around, or you hit the tab key a lot to get around in DOS programs. So they've kept a lot of those hotkey functions in the LAN client. As you'll see that you can even schedule things with Shift F3. I can't remember any of these, so the only one I know, I think help is F1 or something like that. But anyway, so if there's anybody out there who's really dependent on hotkeys, you will not have those in the web client. The next one we'll show you is, and this is another one we get not complaints per se, but it's a training exercise, and it can be kind of annoying to people until they get used to it. In the web client, you have to save your changes. So if you update something on the web client, for example, if you change a phone number or add something to your calendar, you have to hit the save button. And the save button commits your changes to the database. And all web applications work that way. I don't technically know why or what all the limitations are, but that's certainly the case with SalesLogix. It does save the whole record, so anything you changed throughout the account record in this case, even if you have another tab open, like the Details tab, and you put in a SIC code, if you hit Save up here, even though there's a Save button down here, it does save the whole record. Save is save. You don't have to hit them individually. One save does the same as the other, which is saves everything. Again, that's something that we do hear some people not too thrilled about, and I'm not either, but that's just something you get used to doing. Okay, another change, or I should say function that you have in the web that you don't in the LAN is the welcome page and the workspaces page. This is something Sage spent a lot of time on, and because it replaces the need for a lot of reports. Again, kind of some of the old school thinking is you wrote reports to get data back out. In these new modern web applications, you see a lot of dashboards. And so here's the welcome screen, and your administrator can modify these dashboard items. You can drag these around on the screen. Here's some quick actions. Online help is here. External website links, today's activities. These dashboards are able to be organized by the user, which I'll show you here briefly, but also the administrator has control over some of these as well. Oftentimes what we see is they'll change the welcome screen to be something that reflects your company rather than an advertisement for SalesLogix. So the administrator can make changes to all these things, and they can grant you as the user the ability to build your own and make your own dashboards. And I'll show you that here on the next slide. I think we talked about that one. User customizable dashboard widgets and personalized welcome page. And so just as we started to show you, you have the ability to right-click, create either a new tab, which is going to be a collection of your widgets, and or you can right-click and add new content to the one that's already here. So as a user in the web, you can add bar charts and column charts and funnels and different things, pie charts. And you can do that all you want. In the LAN client, you do have a very simple dashboard, but it's fixed. What you see is what you get. The user can't change this, other they can cycle through these tabs at the bottom, but there's really not much else you can do here. Apply a few filters. So this, again, is kind of the old way of doing dashboards, and in the web, they've concentrated on making that really a feature-rich part of the solution to allow people to assemble data the way they want to see it and they need to see it. Okay, next is the what's new area. I really like this part of the solution. It's not talked about all that much. It's actually been in, it used to be part of, if you were a remote LAN client, you were the only user that ever saw this view. And what they decided to do was bring it into the web client. And so in the web client, I kind of think of it as another reports area, another dashboard area, because that's really what it is. If you go into the What's New area, you get to see records organized by tabs. And by the way, you can customize these. So if you have any custom entities or views that you've added into your SalesLogix, you can include those in this What's New area. So I pick the date. How far backwards do I want the system to look for me? And then when I hit search, it's going to return back to me any new, in this case, contacts or any modified contacts since that date or newer. So maybe if I just want, we'll say today, but no, really I want to see what happened yesterday, I can bring up the calendar, click OK, and click search, and nothing changed for contacts, but I have a bunch of new accounts, for example, 20, that were added yesterday. And so you can see the same thing as now you cycle through this data. If there's anything new in any of these areas since yesterday, you're going to see it here in the What's New area. Just another nice form of reporting in the web, not the LAN. And again, I'll say it again, today's presentation is not a demonstration of all the features and functions of SalesLogix. Only what your users are going to gain or lose when they go to the web versus the LAN, because the assumption is everybody's on the LAN and probably considering going to the web. The next thing you'll gain in the web is what we call summary views. So in the LAN client, you've always had the list view and the detail view. So we're looking at a tab which represents a filter, and I'm looking at the list view. And in the web client, you have the same thing. You have the detail view and you have the list views. But there's a third view that you can shift into called the summary view. And you see that throughout the whole system. So we'll go to all accounts just to get the filter off here. And in the summary view, I kind of call it a thumbnail view because there's a lot more information. Even though it's still a listing that you scroll up and down through, there's a lot more information presented to you here. And if you hover your mouse over, for example, tickets or opportunities, it gets a little pop-out window with some hyperlinks in it, which means you can just instantly navigate to John Abbott's record or send them an email. So lots of nice functionality in the summary view that I think is pretty popular with folks who are looking at their data. Also, we have the multi-tab expansion. And this was, when it first came out, they actually called it the Salesforce.com view because it allows you to organize your SalesLogix screens the same way Salesforce does it. Salesforce doesn't have tabs of data. They just have a whole, it's like a roll of paper towels. Every one of these tabs, you just scroll over and over and over. So you can drag contracts up into the middle of the screen. You can drag notes and history up into the middle of the screen. And what I'm doing, again, is kind of creating this roll of paper towels where you go screen after screen after screen, and that's fine. If you love to scroll and you don't mind, buying a new mouse every once in a while because you wore it out, you can go ahead and scroll up and down and create these long, lengthy views in SalesLogix, and you don't have to show any tabs at all at the bottom if you don't want to. You can just have that long scrolling view. It's a personal preference, and each user can set it up the way they want. In the LAN client, you can have one view in the middle, where in the web, you can have as many center tabs displayed as you want to. Hopefully that makes sense. You have that same summary view in the activities screen, but there's one little bit of a difference here that I want to show you. So if I jump over to activities, and you have the ability to show a summary view here as well, which again kind of expands the list and shows you the complete button. So I have this expanded summary view. I've got the same hyperlink options here. I can click in and edit this, but I can also complete it right from here, which is nice. Okay, we'll keep going here. Timeline views, another killer view, another great feature they added to the web that lets you see consolidated data. The fancy word is mashup, because in that timeline view, you get to see a whole bunch of data related to your account or contact. Now I messed up my view. So all on the same screen. So it's called the timeline view. And you notice it's a calendar, and that calendar goes left to right, and you can grab it down at the bottom here and slide it back and forth. And this is showing you all the information all on one screen. So without having to scroll through tabs and click on tabs, you can actually see all the data about Abbott Limited on one screen just by sliding this thing back and forth. So you can kind of see over time, even going back years in this case, you can see, well, how much was going on with Abbott and why isn't there as much going on now? Maybe that's a question you're asking. So all these little tick marks, and however concentrated they are, each one of them represents either a note or a meeting or a phone call to do. Also opportunities and tickets show up on here. You'll notice these long green lines. Well, those are opportunities. And because opportunities span, you know, they have a start and an end date, they show you on here how long that opportunity was open, represented by how long the green line is. And tickets are also going to have a start and stop date, and those are showing up with a span with a red line. So this timeline view is standard on the account and the ticket view. So you get the same thing for tickets. So any, you know, activities, journal entries, things like that are all going to show for tickets as well. Kind of cool. Visual indicators for attachments. Okay, that's nice, but it's not huge. So in the calendar view and the activity view, you see a paper clip if the activity has an attachment. You don't get that in a LAN client. I don't know why, but no paper clip. Quick filters, you probably saw me monkeying with those a little bit, but any of these views, as you're looking at them here, if you do go into the list mode or in the detail mode, you're going to have what are called quick filters. In the LAN client, you have filters represented by tabs. You have the same thing in the web client, but in the web client, they take it even further, and what they say is, okay, you created a tab, maybe it's just my customers, that's fine. But what if I want to drill down even further temporarily? So I've got 300-some customers, but I want to see only the ones in a particular state. So you have these filters over here, and it tells you, okay, of the 336 records in the group, how many of our are in Georgia? Well, 15. So if I check that box for Georgia, it automatically restricts my restricted filter further, and now I'm down to just 15 of the 336 that are in Georgia, but I could say, well, you know, that's right next door to Illinois, even though it isn't. So you can now say, well, show me those two, and then you can just clear those filters out if you want. And you can also edit what fields you even want in your quick filter area. So this is another user setting where they get to decide, well, here's the things I might want to filter on, so I do or don't want those in my little list over on the right. And then you can quickly clear all the filters out. You're still on the customer tab, so it goes right back to 336. But now you can say, well, I just want the ones in advertising. I want to call them today. Pretty cool. The other thing they did, this is kind of a major change. Sales orders are now a main view in the web client. They're still kind of buried as a tab in opportunities in the LAN client, but in the web client, they've actually promoted sales orders to a primary entity, it's called, which means it's going to have a destination on the nav bar. It's going to have the list view and the summary views like we've been monkeying with today. And then you can also drill into one and see just a single sales order or quote. And so that's been promoted. Now, they're still linked to the opportunity if you want. That hasn't been broken, so the data under the hood is the same. The assumption still is that sales orders come from an opportunity. Now, they don't have to be. You can have a standalone sales order not linked to an opportunity, but that functionality is there as well. So there's sales orders for you. So they've made that front and center rather than a buried little feature under opportunities. The other one that I like, performing lead deduplication upon import. You never get duplicates in the real world, do we? Actually, you do. And so what they've done in the web client is they've said, okay, when you import a list of leads, you're trying to bring in a list you bought or found or whatever that would be, you fill out this little wizard, where in the LAN client, the lead import capability was just all on one screen, and basically you map the fields, you picked an owner, and you hit import. That was all it did. In the web, it actually does a lot more things than that, because it actually shows you the data, so you can see, okay, is it really coming in properly? You see a little sample of the records. You can map the fields, save templates. But the biggie is duplicates. I can deal with duplicates. Not only can I deal with duplicates it's about to create from my list, if I've already got the guy in SalesLogix, you can actually run the deduplication against the file. Pretty cool. So you can actually say, well, my file, my CSV file, might have duplicates in it. I don't want to introduce those. I want you to get rid of them first. So you can do that. And you can do some really advanced searching, like stemming, phonics, using a thesaurus and fuzzy logic. It's really hard to say all those big words. So those are all the types of duplicate catching that you can invoke before you run this thing, and then you set the scoring and so forth. Again, today is not a comprehensive demo of all this, but just to say, you have all this deduping horsepower, a click away in the web client. Pretty cool stuff. Okay. Next, we're going to show you merging best of both. I really like this feature too. In my opinion, probably nobody at your company knows your data better than your users. So I typically encourage customers to say, well, allow your users to maintain your data. They're probably the ones putting the garbage in there, so you should let them fix their own data, which is fine. And so what they've built in here, I want to get to a contact list, is why I'm hopping around so much. I don't even have. Okay, look at here's Georgia, Adams, and Georgia. Clearly a dupe. So I'm going to click on the first Georgia, click on the second one, right-click, and merge these records. Now, what you can do in the web is you can make a best of the both record, because one of the Georgias might have some good data. It's not all bad. He might have some good data, and the other one might have some good and bad data. So you get to pick and choose. Well, you know, this one, the numbers or the website's wrong. So I want this website. I'm actually throwing this first record away, but I'm going to keep the website because it's correct. And the target one I'm going to keep is wrong. And I also notice we've been updating some of these fields. So you can say, well, these are right. So when I click OK, I'm going to end up with one Georgia Adams record that consists of the best of all the data of both. And you get to decide that before you merge the data. Don't have that in the LAN, got it in the web, works for accounts, contacts, and leads. Great feature. Okay, here's where you lose out some functionality. In the web, you do not have address book integration. You do in the LAN. A lot of you might go, well, I don't even know what that is, so I doubt that I'll miss it. That's probably true. In the LAN version of SalesLogix, you have the ability to address Outlook emails from Outlook to contacts in SalesLogix. So it can actually look into SalesLogix at the contacts and let you pick and choose SalesLogix addresses from the SalesLogix address book. Attendee availability is there in the LAN, not in the web. It's in version 8, though, so I'm glad they put that back in there, so I'm kind of teasing you with that one. They also, you could push one button in the LAN and create an Outlook contact, which is this little button up here, kind of nice. Doesn't have that in the web. You have to use IntelliSync, which you should really have that turned on anyway, because IntelliSync, which is standard and included with SalesLogix Web, integrates your contacts anyway, but it does it automatically rather than you doing it manually. But you do have the option to do it manually in the LAN. Okay, web-based administrator tools. This is something they're concentrating on a lot in some of the latest releases, and certainly again in version 8. They've even increased this even further. What they're trying to do is eliminate the LAN-based administrator and architect tools and migrate as much of that back-end functionality as they can into the web client. And they've done that. So if you log in as administrator, you can add all these administrative-y type of things to SalesLogix through the web, like add users, teams, departments, roles, products. But you can also manage those things over here on the nav bar. So in the web client, you can manage users, teams, departments, competitors, lead sources, products. Those things you have to kind of do some of it in the LAN client, some of it in the administrator. It's kind of a hodgepodge today. So they're moving these functions into the web client, not moving them into the LAN client, which is fine. And so lots of upside to managing inside of here too. I'm going to say one more thing about version 8. You can even, now in version 8, modify the screens in the web. So you can go to a screen and shift into a design mode and actually modify these screens, move stuff around, add fields and whatnot, without cracking open the architect or even really knowing how to be a developer, because it's kind of a what you see is what you get. Pretty neat. And that's coming again. We'll explain that in more detail in the next Demystify webinar. The last thing I just want to talk about is the application architect. And this is really the only thing I have for the developers. If you don't already know, SalesLogix comes with a development application to allow you to build and modify the screens, create net new code, and it's highly organized if you're a developer, called the application architect. And so that's how you modify screens, add new functions and things in the web client. Where the LAN client has a software back-end component called just the architect, the web uses the application architect. Not sure who thought up that clever naming convention, but that's what they're called. And so, Bree, with that, I think that concludes what I was hoping to show today. And just curious if we have any questions from anybody.
We do. Right now we have one question, and it's about mail merge, and a little more specifically, the user is asking, well, what about mail merge document support? We have extensive Word templates with forms, etc., and they often pre-populate with SalesLogix data. Is that something that they'll be able to continue to do in the web?
Absolutely. It's identical. Yep, the SalesLogix web uses the identical mail merge functionality as the LAN. Now, again, sticking to my theme, I didn't talk today about anything, and I don't mean to say this was exhaustively comprehensive, but the mail merge functionality is the same, so I didn't talk about it, but it is the same. Same mail merge engine, same template, same database, same functionality, all that's identical in the web versus what you can do in the LAN.
Okay, I have another one here, and the question is, what about stacked tabs in the web?
Yeah, you know, that's a good one. Somebody caught me there because there's no stacked tabs in the web. I thought I actually had a slide, but now that somebody caught me, I think I have an example here. Oh, yeah, so here you go. In the LAN, if you have lots of tabs or tabs with really long names, you could stack them, and this thing could be huge. I've actually seen databases with 10 rows of tabs because they have so many tabs. And so in the LAN client, you can stack them on top of each other, where in the web client, if you have lots of tabs, they're just going to be in one big, long, scrolling row, which is why you get this little arrow over here, because you have to kind of just scroll through them left to right. I don't know. I mean, it would be better, I think, if they had that, but they don't. So no tab stacking in the web.
Okay,
Okay.
Another one here. Are there speed differences between the cloud and the web hosted? The cloud was tested and really slow.
Yeah, you know, that's a common one we hear about, and really I'll reveal my secret. I hate the cloud trial system that Sage has because it's one underpowered cloud instance with hundreds of trial systems all running it on the same time. It's really slow, and it's really kind of a poor representation of what it really works like. We don't even use it anymore at Customer FX. We fear the cloud trial because it turns people off, because it is so slow and clunky at times, because there's way too many people using the same underpowered system there, and we've complained about that, but you know, they don't necessarily listen to us. But that's okay. So yeah, it can be really, really slow. In the interest of full disclosure, the web client is definitely going to be slower than the LAN as far as navigating from screen to screen. The LAN client is really snappy. If you've got a sufficiently powered machine, navigating around is pretty instantaneous. You don't really sit and wait for much to happen. In the web client, you got to tune it. You got to get the browser tuned just right, and you got to get the web server tuned just right. And if you do those things, it can actually be pretty fast, but still not as fast as the LAN. It's still going to be a second or two to get things to happen. But once it's kind of up and running and you've visited each screen once or twice, it starts caching data on your local machine, and then it gets really fast. We also found that the browser makes a big difference. And the point of today was not to talk about version 8, but I'll say one more thing about version 8. It is significantly faster. They spent a lot of time making version 8 almost as fast as the LAN, not quite, but even faster than version 7.5.4. The version 8 web is really responsive. It kind of closed the gap on that. I don't think it'll ever be just as fast. But once we tune these systems, we generally don't get complaints from folks about performance. Good question, though.
Okay. Another question we have is, has the query builder functionality changed much in the web?
Not at all, actually. No, it's the same. So you get the very same query builder thing. So you can edit your groups and get the same query builder function. It has changed quite a bit in version 8 for the better, but not much different in the web versus LAN.
Okay. And then what about customizations that you have in the LAN client? If you switch, what would happen?
The data will still be there. Your custom data, your custom fields, your custom data in those fields is all there. But you do have to recreate the views. So if you have custom data or you modified the out-of-the-box views in the LAN, you do have to recreate those in the web. There is no quick, easy way to do that because it really is a completely different, separate application. It was a do-over. The only thing they really share is the database structure itself, and so you do have to recreate those. But the data is still there, so that certainly helps.
Okay. What about the what's new area? Can it be exported to Excel?
I don't think so, no. This is just a view into this filtered data, so the answer is no. You could build a query, if you wanted to, and just basically do the same thing as what's new in a query using a tab and then export it, but right from here you can't. You do screenshots, but there's no reports or Excel export.
Okay. And then somebody's wondering about, do we have any customers who are currently using iPads with SalesLogix Web exclusively?
Not that I know of. I couldn't imagine making still deploy the web client and have all the advantages that I showed you today. and leave the support people on the LAN. So you could deploy both, not a problem, not an issue. In fact, the same user can log into either one. You know, it's kind of confusing to do that, but you could log into either one. There's no problems with doing that at all. Happens a lot, actually.
I do both here. When I'm at home, I log into
absolutely.
our web client, and when I'm in the office, I use the LAN
Absolutely.
version.
Perfectly seamless, yep.
All right. Well, okay. A little bit of confusion on this one. We've installed the cloud in-house, and it was still slow. So,
well, you can't install the cloud in-house. The cloud is the software as a service offering from Sage. You probably what they're meaning is they implemented the web, and yeah, there's a lot of tuning in a lot of cases that has to be done. Because what's happening is when you deploy the web client, you're shifting a lot of the heavy lifting, the software back-end duties to one single server versus where with the LAN client, it's more of a distributed kind of a client-server model where the workstation is called on to do certain things and the server does certain things. In the web, the server does virtually everything. And so you have to get the tuning of that just right. And again, we hear this a lot because if you don't go through that exercise of tuning, setting indexes properly, allocating memory and resources on the boxes you have installed on, that's really critical for a web to run well. You really have to get that figured out, and we always do that with part of the upgrades. When our customers are getting upgraded, we just do those things because we know if we don't, they're going to be unhappy.
Okay, next question I have is it correct that there's no more LAN client in version 8?
Incorrect. There certainly is a LAN client, and it has one new feature called the ribbon. The ribbon. And the ribbon is, instead of the menus, these drop-down menus across the top, it actually looks like this. This is a Microsoft ribbon, so you have these buttons that do everything. So I'm not trying to make fun of this. It is a ribbon interface, and they have added the option of a user to use a ribbon interface in the LAN. I like the ribbon, so that's a new feature. That's the only one I know of in the LAN, in version 8.
Question about improvements on speed search in the web versus the LAN.
It's the same speed search engine. The speed search server and the speed search engine is the same. In both LAN and web, they're almost instantaneous. So it has a very sophisticated mechanism powering speed search. It's actually licensed by Ask Jeeves, which is one of many internet search engines. And so SalesLogix actually licenses Ask Jeeves, and that's what's powering their speed search. And it's the same on the web or the LAN. The results you get back are virtually the same and virtually instantaneous. I don't know how they do that, but they do. So it works fabulous.
I have a user out there wanting to know the programming language you need to customize screens in the web client.
It's actually proprietary. It uses its own language here's features coming. It uses its own language, or you can use C#, ASP.NET, Visual Basic, Visual Studio, any of the Microsoft languages. SalesLogix was very careful when they created this web client to make sure that it was compliant with Microsoft's standards and practices. They actually their developers met with Microsoft to make sure that they adhered to the standards and practices of a Microsoft-ish application so that users could, and our developers certainly do, heavy development in Visual Studio, C#, ASP.NET, and other tools because they're faster at it in those tools. They really get it. And they don't want to be encumbered by a graphical interface, which is what you get in the application architect for SalesLogix. So if you're not a heavy-duty programmer and want to do codeless customizations, you would do that in the proprietary application architect. If you would prefer to write code and not be encumbered by a graphical interface, you can use any other Microsoft tool and just seamlessly embed that right inside of SalesLogix. And it even has built-in editors and so forth for that external code right inside of SalesLogix.
Okay.
I probably didn't answer that very well, not being a developer, but I've heard it said, so I just repeated what I heard.
Good job.
Yeah.
This question is about, well, it has two parts. When is version 8 going to be released? And if you're on 7.5 LAN, would you wait to go straight to version 8 web instead of deploying 7.5x web?
You know, that could go either way. The first answer to the question is version 8 is due out at the end of the summer. My guess is they're going to release it in August at Summit or around Summit. I've heard August, so late summer. It's not even in beta yet. It's still in alpha. And so being an alpha partner, we have it and we get to kick the tires on it and see what it's all about. But it's not even in beta yet, and so it's got a whole beta cycle it has to go through yet, which could be 3 or 4 months easily. But they're saying, you know, mid to end of summer for public release. Would I wait? Probably not. It's not hugely different, and it's a pretty small upgrade to go from 7.5.4 web to 8.0 web. Is a pretty small incremental change, as opposed to going from the LAN anything to the web anything, because that's a do-over. That's a start over. In version 8, it's just an incremental change rather than a wholesale kind of what we call forklift upgrade. Pick the whole thing up and start over. So that's my opinion at the moment.
Okay, let's see. Okay, I can take care of that one. Just a request for a link. Another request for everybody who is requesting links to our previous Demystifying series. I've had requests for a couple different ones. Don't worry, I'll get those out to you in the next day or so.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that SalesLogix would abandon the LAN client totally?
I don't think there's any chance they won't. I would say they definitely have kind of already done that. Hopefully there's none of them on the phone that are going to call me and yell at me, but in my opinion, they did that years ago because it hasn't changed. And what has changed is pretty insignificant. So is it going to completely go away and be unsupported? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you're probably 5 years away from that at least. But yeah, I think that's inevitable.
Okay. And then this is a question about Android tablets, and do you know of anyone who has connected to SalesLogix Web via the Android tablet?
Yeah, I've got one. You know, I've got a Kindle Fire, and it works fine with the SalesLogix Web. However, you have to navigate with your finger, which is a little tricky. The scroll bars don't work right. You can't any right-click menus. There is no right-clicking on a tablet, so any local right-click menus obviously aren't there. Things like mail merge and Outlook integration and running Crystal reports don't work right, but it does render the interface, and you can navigate around, look stuff up, schedule activities, things like that. All of that works fine on an Android tablet, including a Kindle Fire, which is an Android tablet. I've got one of those too. And yes, it does work within certain limitations. Now, a better solution is the mobile SalesLogix Web client. And of course, that is completely tablet optimized and smartphone optimized. So if you buy the cloud, or you deploy the web on-premise, you get the mobile app with it and can do things like cache local data. It's integrated with the phone if you've got an iPhone or a Galaxy or whatever you have for an Android device, and it's integrated with your calendar. So your choice, either one. It does work, sort of.
This one is regarding response time, and it's a little more specific. And the question is, we currently have 800,000 plus accounts and 2 million plus contacts in our SalesLogix database. They're on 753 LAN, and their response time isn't very fast. And the user is wondering if there are any upper limits that have been reached for response time on the web client related to the size of records in the accounts, contacts, activity, etc. So are there any known limits for those areas?
Not at all, no. We have clients with many millions of records, tens of millions, without problems. Again, it all comes back to tuning the SQL server, the web server, and indexing your database properly to maximize throughput. The web client uses paging technology, so even though you have a million records, it doesn't try to load all million of them when you click on the All Contacts tab. It's not trying to transmit all million of them. It's only sending you the first few, like 22 in this case, and then when you scroll down, it keeps handing you a few more and a few more and a few more. So it's all about tuning indexes and having a reasonably fast local machine. Can't be underpowered, and that's how you get them to work quickly. It can perform really badly, don't get me wrong, if you don't have all that stuff right. There's plenty of examples of that, but once somebody who knows what they're doing kind of digs into it and figures it out, your partner, it should be fine. And we have clients with much bigger databases without performance issues.
Okay, our next question is, how does the web version handle working offline?
There's actually a disconnected web client, and what I like about it is it's the identical interface. So you actually get a local copy of your database on your laptop and the same web interface. So you actually open a browser, and you can actually, when you log in, point it at your local database rather than the central database, and it synchronizes in the background. SalesLogix has always had a pretty good remote sync engine. It's not foolproof, but it's pretty good as far as they go. And so the answer is you have a fully functioning offline web client with version 7.5.4.
Okay. Does the mobile version work with BlackBerry?
Only the touchscreen ones. There is a specific called Legacy Mobile that is available for trackball BlackBerries, which are still pretty popular in some of the bigger corporate environments. So the answer is, if you have a trackball BlackBerry, I forget what they even call it anymore, there's a version, a mobile version of SalesLogix for those devices. If you have any of the newer touch screen versions of BlackBerries, and specifically they need an HTML5 compatible browser. I'm not even sure what browser BlackBerry uses anymore, but as long as it has an HTML5 compatible browser, you can use the SalesLogix mobile client, the new web mobile client, just fine.
Okay. I need to make sure the SalesLogix Outlook integration will still exist with the web, mainly calendars.
It does, yep. Through IntelliSync and the Desktop Integration Manager, calendar syncing is still there. In fact, it's even better in version 7.5.4 because it's now push-based, so it's aware that you made a change and actually does it live in real time rather than timed in batches or triggering on events. So it's actually getting better and better, and it works fine in the web. It doesn't care which client it is, LAN or web. It uses the same IntelliSync engine to accomplish the integration. So the answer is yes, it works in the web.
Okay. Is there a way to handle a large number of attached files and sort them rather than a long list? And I'm guessing this is for the referencing SalesLogix Web for this question, but I'm
Okay.
not sure.
Even knowing that, I'm not sure what the question is.
Okay.
Maybe they'd be willing to give us an example.
Okay. Well, I will wait and see if we get anything. You mentioned that a sales rep running the web client from an iPad would not be enough. Can you give me some examples of what kind of challenges you've encountered?
No Word integration, no Outlook integration, no right-click menus because there's no right-click button, and a lot of SalesLogix web has right-click local menus, they call them, to do things. So none of that would be there. Dragging and dropping doesn't work. Some of the interface, like some of the scroll bars don't render properly. So those are just some of the ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay. We're winding down in time here, but I think we can get this last one in. And this user is just wondering if the test system you're using right now for this demo is a system that you would consider to be tuned and indexed, and I think he's referring to speed of the system that you're using right now.
No, I'm running this whole kit and caboodle on my poor little laptop, and that's certainly something you would never do in the real world. So no, I'm running multiple apps and this whole web server environment all on my little Dell laptop. And so this would not be an example of what I would call a snappy web interface.
All right. Well, Scott, that wraps up our questions then. Everybody who has requested links to various demystifying SalesLogix videos or webcasts that we've done, I will get those to you in the next day or so, and we will also have a recording of this webcast available in the next day or so as well. So I want to thank you all for attending, and thank you, Scott, for your time in answering all these questions.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
The